We don't like to bet, but okay, it is the king's pawn. Okay, Magnus, he's maybe... Wow, okay, Nepomniachtchi opening with the Sicilian. Nepomniachtchi, that is one of his favourite ways, well, it's by far his favourite way of meeting the king's pawn opening, and now we do see not the main line, no open Sicilian yet, but a bit of bluff by both players, I think. Now, yes. Okay, Carlsen developing his knight, Nepomniachtchi also bringing his knight towards the centre. This is a key moment. Will Carlsen, he does open up the centre, so this is called an open Sicilian. It's likely... Okay, it transposes to the Taimanov Sicilian.
He lost to Giri with the black pieces, and he actually beat Hikaru Nakamura in that tournament. And David is totally right.
Always want to jump forward and attack the black queen. That has not been allowed. Everybody's been playing over the last 4 or 5 years was to bring out the white queen in that position, but instead Magnus just develops his bishop, getting ready to castle the white king to the right side of the board. Often they try to castle to the left if they're feeling super ambitious, but Magnus just trying to play a quieter game. Nepomniachtchi saying no quiet game for you. I'm going to push pawns. Nepomniachtchi there playing the most ambitious, the most aggressive move for black. That pawn is destined to push forward 1 square further if it can, to kick away one of white's knights from the centre. He doesn't want to rely purely on that. But OK, he does play one of the most common moves, knight takes knight. And the black queen immediately recaptures. My secret's here. But OK, we're seeing very well-known stuff. White's pawn pushing forward. White's bishop now challenging the black queen along the diagonal.
Yes, sorry, David. This is just actually a repetition of Giri's game against Nepomniachtchi.
Right now... OK, there we go. The light squared bishops disappear from the board.
Yeah.
Now, will we see the white king castle? No, we see the queen move. This is what Giri played as well.
This is exactly what Giri played. And...
so this was 2 months ago?
Yeah, 2 months ago. And, well, now we have a change, because Nepomniachtchi actually chose to develop the dark square bishop and to pin the white knight. And now he has developed his knight. Yeah. And because the thing is with this, I mean, we just saw it fluctuating so wildly that I think it's one of those things that, I don't know, I would appeal to my risk-loving side.
Nepomniachtchi thinks maybe we can bring up the analysis board just to show the main ideas in this position. So last move, Magnus did bring his bishop into black's half of the board. He is eyeing up this diagonal, and there's a bit of an idea here. If you do just try and kick this bishop away, if you bring your rook across, try to harass this bishop, white's knight is going to jump into the centre of the board, and suddenly black does have a very weak square in his camp. This is an outpost. All of white's pieces are controlling this square, and if white's knight can jump there, that's going to be what we call a family fork. The king's going to be attacked, the queen and the rook. So black cannot allow that. Wow, Nepomniachtchi instead does get greedy. Queen takes pawn. I mean, I barely considered this. I don't know about you, Ivanka, but he takes this pawn. It looks like an irrelevant one. But now, surely white is just going to castle his king to the other side and laugh at black. Say, what's your queen doing there? It's off in Siberia somewhere. And suddenly there's a threat of queen takes pawn, checkmate. White's queen, if it does capture that pawn, it will be protected by the rook behind it. And black's king in huge trouble right now. The black queen is going to have to scamper back. She's going to have to run the whole way back. But black's lost 2 moves just for the sake of 1 pawn. And it looks like white might be able to build up an attack by bringing his knight into the centre of the board now.
Yeah, well, it's actually on the board, David. I mean, I agree with you when it comes to timing and everything. It looks quite risky, but it is a pawn, and we do love the little guys.
Yeah, pawns are the soul of chess. That's what they say.
And OK, well, the action really is heating up because Magnus centralised his knight, and that knight was also threatening all sorts of unpleasant checks, and this is why Nepomniachtchi has been forced to make his knight move. And now the big question is, how is Magnus going to justify his pawn deficit? But on the other hand, we have a situation where black can't do anything. You know, black can mobilise 1 rook, and then white can simply improve the pieces. OK, so Magnus has centralised the 1 rook that wasn't working, and so his intention now is presumably to do what he likes. He can step it up 1 square and then try to set up some kind of triple alignment with the queen and the rooks.
He could have done that last move, though, so maybe not his immediate idea. I think that's just a very Magnus Carlsen type of move, right? That rook was doing nothing, so before you even calculate, before you even come up with a plan, just improve it first. And all of white's pieces nicely centralised now.
Attack, we have to
Yeah, we're going to see this. Black did bring his rook across. And one thing I think White should be aiming for, as you mentioned, is maybe to just to shuffle the rook up one square. If Black continues to do nothing, then bring the rook across. And this is going to be a very nice kind of setup for White. But first, we did... Wow, we're on form with the predictions, Ivanka. We did predict that White would bring his king across one square. This is a general rule that I think is useful for everyone at home. If you castle over on the long side, we call it queenside castling. If you castle over to the left side of the board, with White or the same with Black, you always want to take a step over again with the king. It means that you have 3 pawns sheltering the king. And, for example, you won't be under attack by any diagonals later on. So it's always important to shuffle your king over. Even if there's no immediate rush or need for it, just spend that extra move. Your king will feel much safer and thank you for it later on in the game. And now Nepomniachtchi has the question what to do. One move I'm slightly tempted to suggest for Black. I don't think it's very good, but one move I would be tempted to suggest is to just shuffle the king across and run away this way. You think no, Ivanka?
No. You don't need to do anything, David.
Okay. Better to sit still, right?
Oh, okay. Well,
okay.
This is what we were I was kind of worrying a little bit. What is Black going to do? And Nepomniachtchi does have an answer, and he's saying that he wants to break.
He does have his calculating face on. Okay, then he looks away. Knowing Magnus, normally when he's kind of just staring, not flinching too much, he's calculating. And in the end, okay, wow, Ivanka, you're looking shocked. I feel shocked that he didn't open up the position. All of White's pieces are ready to start firing, and
exactly, because the goal of when you're attacking is to open lines. That is your currency, and so for Magnus not to automatically go pawn takes pawn, open up the rook, and I just think that the knight coming forward is just asking to be played. Well, this is the beauty about chess, you know, it is not computers playing the game, it's 2 humans, and you can easily get caught up in the fog of war, you can overlook things, you can just... I think Magnus is looking back and thinking back to those previous opportunities.
Yeah, Black looking pretty solid. The Black king obviously still not ideally placed. If you could kind of pick up the Black king and put it in one of the 2 corners, not sure which one, then Black would feel very, very happy. But meanwhile, Magnus just bringing the White rook across.
Not you guys then, because you didn't see it. But if people at home, whoa.
We've seen a huge blunder on the board by Nepomniachtchi. Nepomniachtchi trying to trade the queens, trying to head to an endgame, but he's just missed this last move. White jumping in with his knight, giving check. And if that knight is taken, then there are consequences. White's queen will jump into the position. Actually, Black's about to lose either a rook or a queen.
Whoa.
Nepomniachtchi, we see it on his face. He did not even consider that move. That's why we always say, look for checks first in every position, because if they work, they're extremely strong. They're extremely powerful. Nepomniachtchi, just a 1-move blunder in a solid position. He should have slow played it. He rushed, maybe feeling the tension, feeling the pressure and the momentous occasion. He wanted to eliminate that by trading queens, and now he's dead lost. And the mistake was bringing his queen into the middle of the board, and Magnus immediately punishing it. Knight jumping into the position, attacking the king and attacking the rook. If this knight gets captured, I mean, if it doesn't, you can just take the rook. If it gets captured, though, then suddenly White's queen would jump into the position, giving check. And when the king moves, no matter where it goes, there's an attack opened up against the Black queen.
Wow, what a huge blunder by Nepomniachtchi. And you're right, David, it's all to do with failing to calculate the checks, the captures and attacks. It was sloppy.
Sloppy, yeah.
With the knight, so it is slightly understandable. And actually, I would have modified, if I'd seen that check, I would have modified my suggestion of the rook move. But okay, yeah.
Now
He's lost the exchange, and unfortunately, it won't be just the exchange that he's losing, because a pawn drops.
Okay, there we go, rook takes pawn. So now it's exactly a rook for a knight. Pawns are level right now. And, yeah, the rooks, they will combine. They will be able to target Black's pawns. Black's knight doesn't have a real strong hold long term. Okay, the Black king stepping forward. That's a good practical try, activating the king. Magnus now has got options. He can bring the other rook across to support. He can just drop that rook back. And, okay, Nepomniachtchi, you asked whether there's any hope, Ivanka. It's probably, that's his last hope, those 2 pawns on the right side. It's 2 versus 1 on that right flank. What do you think the chances are of saving this game?
Well, we've seen Magnus be endgame virtuoso, so we've not seen the like. I think the chances are very, very minimal. I mean, it requires a huge blunder from Magnus, and I just don't see that's going to happen. And there you can see that Magnus is opening up lines for his rook, and now he's...
Yeah, so...
no, both the players moved, and I wanted to have the game finished at that precise minute, but no, they're just stretching.
Yeah, I was like, what's happening? Because there's still hope for Nepo here, right?
There's still hope.
Yeah.
It's disappearing by the move.
Yeah.
But, it's definitely not the type of position you resign. I know, and I mean, I still would never dream of resigning this, even if I were playing Magnus Carlsen, because knights, especially in rapid chess, when the clocks are ticking down, knights are so tricky. You can imagine them jumping around, causing all sorts of havoc against the white king, against the white rooks. Also, black does have this 2 versus 1 advantage, and he's trying to push. You should always push pawns on the side that you're stronger. Don't push the pawns on the side where you're weaker or where you have your own king. But black's now, he is going to bank everything on those 2 black pawns on the right side.
Yeah.
There we go.
And he's doing just like you said, David, he's pushing his pawn. And now the question is, can Magnus simply get greedy and trust that his rook is going to be flexible enough to defend from the back?
And I think, as you mentioned, Jovanka, after rook takes pawn right now, white's rook will find it the whole way around, and it will stop black's pawns on the right side from behind. That's the key thing.
OK, well, Magnus doesn't do that. Instead, he centralises his king.
OK.
This is...
slow by Magnus, right? The white king stepping across.
Slow or very accurate.
Very accurate.
I'm just thinking that he's calculated... well, actually, I'm not going to say calculated. I'm going to say intuited that his king is perhaps a good defender and can hold off those pawns on the right.
I think Magnus, now he is starting to calculate, but now he's realising it's not as easy as maybe it should have been. And, OK, we do see the rooks about to leave the board. Nepomniachtchi just taking a short break there, but now pawn takes rook. And what do you think, Jovanka? King rushed that white king over to the right side. Yeah, that's the most solid way of dealing with those pawns, for sure. Maybe jumping into the centre of the board, then jumping towards the right, jumping towards white's pawn in the corner.
He's mobilising the king. It's getting ready. I mean, I predicted the king would step up 1 square further, but OK. OK,
he does push his corner pawn
on the board.
There's a threat.
Yes.
There's a big threat in the position, actually. Black is threatening to push his other pawn now.
Shall we show it, David?
Yep.
We do have to show that danger. If Magnus is very careless and pushes a pawn, yes, to say, then Nepomniachtchi will jump for joy and push his own pawn, because the point is that after pawn takes pawn, well, oh dear.
And bad start by Mamedyarov, and these 2 players, they did start well. And OK, wow, Magnus Carlsen bringing his king across, and Nepomniachtchi just ignores the fact that, well, at least I thought that...
There's a trick there. There was a big trick there, David.
Yep.
He couldn't have captured that pawn because... do we have time to show it?
Yeah, let's bring up the analysis board. There was a trick of white capturing this pawn and now black jumping forward with his own pawn. And now, if we stop it, if we stop this black pawn from promoting, after knight takes pawn check, the king moves, and now black will make a new queen, and the black knight defends it. But, OK, there have been moves. So instead of allowing this, white did bring his king across, and now, after the rook steps back, I don't think this has gone very well for Magnus Carlsen. Now the black knight's jumping forward, check, about to pick off a pawn. And I did mention earlier, Jovanka, white is running out of pawns on this side. 1 versus 1 on this one side, and white's king being so far away, I don't think it's going to be enough for Magnus Carlsen to win anymore. He's just running out of pawns.
You did say it, and I refuse to believe it.
It's still, I mean, you could still argue that white has winning chances here.
No, I did not see it, David. I was like, there is no way on earth that's going to happen. And once those pawns get traded off, it's just a draw.
Rook versus knight. It's not completely basic. There are some tricks, but for these players, it's quite elementary. I think a rook will never beat a knight on its own. The black knight will be able to defend its own king. So, OK, we do see a couple of pawn pushes there. I was about to say, before those pawns pushed, I was about to ask you whether it reminded you of any endgame, Jovanka, especially if the white king was able to suddenly magically transport itself over to the left side. It would have actually been a kind of mirror image of the game Caruana versus Vachier-Lagrave from the candidates. The same pawns, the same rook versus knight combo, but now we see white's king is just too far away from the action. Black's knight is about to attack white's pawn, and that white pawn, I don't think there's any way to preserve it, essentially.
No.
Nepomniachtchi he's got plenty of time, 6 minutes. He's just going to find a way to trade off his own pawn for white's pawn, and that's it. Should be a draw.
Great save by him then.
Miraculous save.
A few minutes ago, we asked you, can Nepomniachtchi save it? You weren't too sure about it.
You were thinking resignation, wasn't that out of the question?
Yes.
And,
totally. I mean, this is the kind of beauty of chess. You know, it was a very careless mistake by Nepomniachtchi, but you know, he fought so hard, so well to kind of get this position, and it does look like a draw is very much within reach. But yeah, what a save!
Yeah, what a save, and maybe it's just missed opportunities as well for Magnus. It didn't look like he found the most direct way to win. He did hesitate. It was too slow, this plan, bringing his king over. And yeah, fortunes are improving for Nepomniachtchi, just like it is for Bitcoin, slightly over the last couple of minutes.
Wow, the first meet between these two after realizing they will face each other in the World Chess Championship match. Magnus Carlsen, in what he's normally an expert in, the endgame, right?
Yeah.
Sort of missing out on the winning chances.
Yeah, it feels like his calculation wasn't quite what it usually is over the last few moves. And, OK, there we go. Nepomniachtchi bringing his knight to attack white's rook. That rook will move, and then black will just bring his pawn down one square to try and trade pawns. Yeah, I think if Magnus Carlsen is to win the World Championship match against Nepomniachtchi, he's going to have to grind out these games a bit better.
Yeah.
He's going to have to be super accurate. Nepomniachtchi, once you give him a chance, he will take it. And there we go. The pawns disappear from the board, and the play is just agree a draw. King versus king. No chance. Magnus not even trying to win that one. Miraculous save by Nepomniachtchi.
Wow, I can't believe it. We just saw the first game between these two after Nepo won the candidate.